the difference between the two. So in permissionless blockchain, the best example is, let's start with an example. Let's take an example of Bitcoin. It's the most popular one. So it's a permissionless blockchain. So in a permissionless
Hello.
block, hello, yeah, hello, hello,
Tanmay, you can go
yeah, okay,
ahead.
okay,
Part two,
okay,
please kindly mute yourself.
okay,
Don't unmute.
okay. So if there is a question, I will give the time after every slide so that you can ask the questions. Okay. So I was talking about permissionless blockchain. So let's start with an example of Bitcoin. So what is a permissionless blockchain? So in the permissionless blockchain, anybody can create and access data. Like anybody can transact between anyone with anyone. Anybody can write his own smart contracts. Anybody can run the node. Like anybody can mine and join the Bitcoin network. Right? It's 100% transparent. All the business logic, everything is accessible to everyone. So relatively, it's high level of anonymity. Like nobody knows who is transacting among, like two people are transacting. No third party or government or anybody can know who are the two parties interacting. So this is the 100% level of high level of anonymity in permissionless blockchain. But the issue with permissionless blockchain is it is relatively slow. It has a scaling challenges, uh, and it's hard to maintain the network every time. And the incentives for the nodes of the network are that they get the monetary incentive when they mine. So an incentive is there to keep the network always up. So they give miners some incentive in form of Bitcoin, right? And Ethereum, it's given as Ether. So these are two permissionless blockchain. But let's come to a scenario where banks wants to transact over a blockchain. They want to use the essence of blockchain, that is immutability and provenance. So they want to get the benefit of blockchain, but they also want access controls at the different levels. Like manager has this task to do, then a chairman has this task to do, and XYZ. So that's why they need a permission blockchain. And so Hyperledger, Corda, and Quorum are the examples of it. They add a layer of permissions over the blockchain. So what is a permission blockchain? So it's a closed ecosystem. It has pre-assumed nodes. Like in Bitcoin or Ethereum, anybody can join, right, and run a node. And in permission blockchain, you have a predefined, pre-approved nodes. Like SBI will run a node, and then JP Morgan will run a node, or let's say RBI will run 10 nodes. So it's a predefined nodes. Everybody knows who is running the network. It's a decentralized, and transparency varies. Like uh, some things are visible to RBI, some people things are visible to SBI, but not everything is visible to everyone. So there is no anonymity in permission blockchain because everybody knows where the network is running, who is running the node, and mining is not required in this network because you basically decide beforehand that who will be running the node. So there is no need to keep the network up by any kind of incentives. So what benefits it adds is that it has a performance, very good performance, and it scales very well. So this is the basic difference between permission blockchain and permissionless blockchain. So this session is on Hyperledger, and Hyperledger is a, basically a permission blockchain. So what is Hyperledger in more detail? So it's a permission distributed ledger framework, okay, and it's basically modular and versatile. By modularity and versatility, we mean is you can plug and play any component of Hyperledger network. Like you want to have a different certificate authority, okay, you change it. You have a different, you do want to have a different consensus mechanism, okay, you change your order. You make some changes in your order. So it's you will learn all these order and everything ahead in this lecture. I will tell you. But so it's by modularity that it is flexible across industries. Every industry can change according to their business need. So unique approach to consensus, it offers a unique approach to consensus. By this, we mean Hyperledger does not go with that mining and everything, that ether and gas. So it has a different way of committing the blocks, and hence the performance increase many folds, and it provides a unique way of consensus. Okay, and it has a plug and play components, as I said, that you can change the component as per your business need. And it is basically a project funded by our open source project funded by Linux Foundation, and it has major contributions from Intel and IBM. Yeah. So more on what is distributed ledger. Okay. So every network has a channels, and every channel has a distributed ledger. So what is a distributed ledger? So distributed ledger is a basically a state management of all the assets on the network. You can make the car is a asset, a dollar bill is also an asset. So every tangible or intangible thing that have a digital footprint and wants to have a track of where it is going every time is done with the help of distributed ledger. So it's a digital form of a real world thing. And what are the transactions? Transactions in Hyperledger represents the invocation of the business logic. Invocation means the person who is again and again requesting the chain code or the smart contract to run at particular time. So when I say a transaction, let's say I want to execute a function, transfer $5 from A to B. So I will tell this to chain code, and the chain code will be executed at peers. And this, my command that transfer A to B will be registered as a transaction. Another kind of transaction will be suppose somebody is taking Facebook, Flipkart reviews on blockchain. So when I say a review of a product X, I will say my review is this on the product X, product S. Oh, sorry, X. And so what will happen? It will be recorded as a transaction that Tanmay recorded a review against product X, and this is the review. So it will be in the ledger. So it's not always a transferring thing. It can be anything. Whenever you execute a function on the chain code, it will be registered as a transaction on the Hyperledger. So all transaction is recorded, and these records are immutable. Yeah, the basic property of blockchain. So what is chain code? So a chain code is basically you are an organization, you are a group of organization, you came up with a problem and you think the blockchain has a solution. So you sit down together and define the business logic, like these things will go through blockchain and this will be the way, and these will be the things in the middle. Okay. So now that business logic is on paper, now you want to code it. So the code for writing for the business logic is chain code. It's a smart contract. So smart contract is the business logic, and chain code is the in terms of Hyperledger, like you are writing the chain code. And since in Ethereum they haven't changed the name, they call smart contract for the code as well. So in Hyperledger it's a chain code. Okay, and it has various functions like any other computer program. And how this program will be executed, but by the way of transactions. So there are two kinds of transactions. I will let you know as we move ahead, like read and invoke, like querying and invoking. So query will not be registered on the ledger, and invoking for all the invoking transactions will be registered on the ledger. So as of now, from Hyperledger community, you can write the chain code in 3 languages: Go, Node.js, and Java. So I will be teaching you writing chain code in Go language. Okay. So any doubts as of now? Any hands raised or something? You can post the doubts here in the message so that I can see in the chat. Okay, no doubt as of now, I think. So we'll start with what the architecture of the Hyperledger fabric, so that you have a proper clarity of it. Yes, so this is the basic outline of Hyperledger fabric network. And what happens? So what are the components? As I was talking earlier, that these all components are pluggable. So yes, so here are the things, like there is a client application, like your web application, your Android application, anything on the left. And this is under the blue, the blue background is a whole Hyperledger network. Okay, so what are the components here? So here are peers. Peers, what are the peers? Peers are basically nodes at each organizations. Like let's take an example of that banks are transacting among it. So one of the peer will be running at SBI, or like RBI will be running 4 peers. So RBI has 4 nodes and SBI has 1 node. So this is the peer at every node. Okay. And what is the orderer? So orderer is the one that that orders the transactions and then makes a block. So the block is formed here at ordering service. The ordering service generates the block of the blockchain. Okay. And there is a ledger of every channel and the chain code, obviously, and the events API, that is a different thing. So in Bitcoin case, ordering is done through mining. Okay. And in Hyperledger, ordering, there is a different orderer, and you can decide the specifications of the orderer. As I said, Hyperledger is a pluggable blockchain framework. Okay, so you can change this order anytime. And there is a Fabric certificate authority that maintains the certificates, like X509 certificates of every individual on the network. Like this Hyperledger network is run by an admin. Okay, so admin's private and public key will be managed by this Fabric CA server. So it's certificate authority. Then there are membership services. This is an optional thing, membership services, and there is the external certificate authority. So these are optional things, and you can change. You can change the certificate authority. You can change the membership service. Everything on the Hyperledger network is pluggable, so you can change. Okay. So any doubts so far in this? Or should I move ahead? Okay. So let's continue. Yeah. Now there are different kinds of nodes on this network, as I said. So peers are basically every node on the network. Every node on the network is called known as peer, that has the ledger and that commits the transaction on the blockchain. Okay. And then there are endorsing peers. So what is the specialty of an endorsing peer is that chain code is installed at these endorsing peers. Okay. This is that they must hold the they must hold this smart contract, basically chain code. So the peers that are running the chain code are called endorsing peers. Okay. Then there are ordering nodes. So ordering nodes are the nodes of orderer. Okay, so orderer is run at the admin side, and the nodes of it are called as ordering nodes. So they are responsible for putting all the transactions in a block. Okay. And it does not have a ledger. An ordering node does not have a ledger, right? So how transaction happens in the Hyperledger network? Okay, so what happens is, this is a client. Okay, like I am using a web application. So I will send a transaction proposal to endorsing peers. So E0, E1, E2 are the endorsing peers. You see, they has a chain code running. There's a chain code. So I will send the transaction proposal to endorsing peers. Transaction proposal is only sent to endorsing peers. Okay. So what they will do, there is an endorsement policy lying in the network. This P is the endorsement policy that I code in the network, that I tell the network. So what they will do, E0, E1, and E2 will execute that transaction proposal and generate read-write sets of that transaction proposal. And so yeah, they are executing those proposals. Now they're executing, and after that they return this read-write sets simulations back to my client, like my web application server. So it's sent back to the SDK server. Now that SDK server will send all those read-write sets to the orderer. Okay. Now orderer will do nothing. Order, what will order do? Order will just put that in order and makes a block, and then now the block is generated from the order, and now it's broadcasted to every peer on the network. Okay, so there is no kind of crash fault tolerance. So that's why everything is broadcasted to every peer, irrespective of that it is having a chain code or not. So you see that peer 4 does not have a chain code, then also the block has sent to it. Okay, now what will happen? Now every peer will run the transaction, will again simulate the transaction on their own, and when the read write sets are, will check the read write sets. If read write sets are same, then it will add to the respective ledger. Like you can see here, the new block has been added to the respective ledgers. Okay. Now the block has been added, like you can see everywhere. And if any of the case, in any case, if like say on endorsement peer E0, the transaction fails, the read write set doesn't match, so it will not be added in this ledger, and then it will be broadcasted to the whole network that yeah, the transaction failed here, and then it will not be added into the it will be added into the ledger, but it will not change the world state. The validated transactions are applied to the world state and retained on the ledger. Invalid transactions are also retained on the ledger, but not update the world state. So what does this mean? So who is doing the part of adding transactions to the ledger? So what order is doing that thing, right? Order is adding transaction into the block. Okay. Now all that block that contains around 5-10 transaction is sent to the peers. Peer is simulating all those transactions, and if it fails, so the transaction will remain on the ledger, but the transaction will not change the world state. Okay, so it's an important concept. So let's think it over. Let me explain you with an example. Let's say I am saying that I manufacture a car, and I manufacture that car at a cost of 10 lakhs. Okay, and I onboarded that car on the blockchain ledger, and there is someone in city like say Noida, and he is sitting there, is a dealer. So what price should be reflecting on his portal? What is the price of the car? So it should be reflected as 10 lakh. But if any of the at any stage any of the peers says no, the read write set doesn't match, so the transaction failed. So at the dealer's end, car price will not be 10 lakhs. It will be saying something not available or something like that. But it will not reflect the state of the world. Like nobody will get to know that the car price was 10 lakh until and unless everybody on the net agrees that, on the network of Hyperledger agrees that yes, the car price was 10 lakh according to the read write set generated. So this is the whole flow, and at each time when the block adds to the ledger, every nodes generates an event, and these events are sent to the SDK layers, and the SDK layers access them and check that every peer has approved the transaction, and these are the transaction approved by the peer, or this transaction was rejected by the peer, and basically reflect that to the client application. As I said in an example, that like dealer will be knowing that it's 10 lakh if everything is okay. Otherwise, it will not be knowing that the current price of the car. Yeah. So I think it's a bit confusing now. Do you have any questions? I would like to answer the questions here. Anybody? Hello.
Yes, sir. I think there is no queries from the participant side. You can proceed with the presentation.
Okay. So what I will suggest is you please keep checking the chats, and if any queries arises in the middle, you just please notify me.
Yeah, sure, sir. I'll do.
Okay. Okay. Thanks a lot. Okay. Okay. So I think there must be some questions, but okay, no issues. So what happens, how the consensus, the main buzzword in this whole blockchain space is consensus is slow and proof of work, everything. So what happens in Hyperledger network consensus mechanism? So how is it fast? So what they do is, there are only 3 steps. They execute at endorsing peers, right? They execute at endorsing peers, and then they send it to the orderer, and then orders all the transactions, and then he broadcasts, and then it broadcasts to the whole network, and the network validates by simulating the transactions. So this way consensus is achieved, no mining, no proof of stake, nothing needs to be here. Hyperledger provides a different way around for consensus. Okay. Yeah, so basically now there is another, I am summarizing what I have iterated through. Yeah. So there are 2 kinds of functions, okay, on a chain code, Fabric chain code. So there is a invoke function and there is a query functions. Okay. So invoke functions execute the business logic, and query functions reads the asset of the state. Like I want to check where my car is now after leaving the manufacturing unit. So I will be executing the query state. And suppose I am the middle warehouse anywhere in the delivery of, like I am a railways department, let's say, and the car is traveling through railways. So when the car is onboarded on my train, I will execute the invoke function. Yes, I have, the car is onboarded on this time, and it will arrive, it is arrived on this station. And when the car departs from my train, I would also execute the invoke function, and I will say, okay, the car left from my train, and I deport the car at this station, and timestamp and everything. Okay, so so there are query functions and invoke functions. There are 2 type of functions of chain code. Okay, so there are basically how you send the arguments to the functions. You send the arguments to the function in a JSON format, in an array, and the first element of the array will be the function name you want to execute, and then the parameters. Like first element will be onboard the car from the manufacturer side, and the second parameter will be car model, car's engine number, and everything. Okay. Okay, so as I said, so function are of 2 kinds, invoke and query. So the invoke functions are recorded in the ledger, and this is the thing that needs to be understood well. So all the invoke functions, the transaction in which I am saying that invoke this function. So invoke functions are recorded on the ledger as transactions. Okay. And all the query functions are not recorded on the ledger, because I'm just reading the state of it. There is no point in recording the transactions on the ledger, on the ledger as a request that person X requested the state of the ledger. In some business case, it might be possible that querying that you want to know at what time the data was queried. In very rare, the very critical situation, this situation also arises. So what you do, you write the querying logic in the invoke function itself. Okay. And every time when the person invokes wants to read the state also, then he will execute the invoke function in place of query function, and that request will also be recorded as a transaction. So this is the way you can do things. Okay. So the flow of transaction in invoke and query is not same. Let me explain you what's the difference. So this is the transaction flow. It's not a query flow. It's basically the transaction flow. So what happens is a client sends the transaction proposal to endorsing peers. You see endorsing peers. Okay. Then you see the endorsing peers, and the endorsing peers signs and sends the transaction proposal. By signing, I mean they generate the read set back to the client, and clients then send that signed proposal to the orderer. Orders order those transactions into a block. A block is then broadcasted to all the peers on the network, irrespective whether they have a chain code or not. like the fourth pair does not have a chain code. So the block, it will receive a block anyway. And then they will simulate, and then they will update the ledgers. Okay. And that was the invocation flow. Okay, that was the invocation flow. Now it's a query flow. In query flow, client application sends the query request to the peers. But see, it can only send the request to the peers that has a chain code installed. It cannot send the request to this peer because there is no chain code. So when there is no program, how will you query the database, right? So they can only request these three peers for the querying. And the one important thing to notice here is, you see there is no connection with orderer, right? No connection of any sort with orderer in querying. So since there is no orderer, so there will be no transactions on the ledger, because orderer is the one who numbers the transaction and puts it on the ledger. So since no orderers, no transactions on the ledger, transaction for querying. Okay. So anybody can query through the endorsing peers. Okay. Now so what's the summary? So chain code models a real world asset. Chain code exposes functions to change the state of the data. Like say car is current when it's manufactured, it's owned by the manufacturer, then it's owned by the wholesaler, then it's owned by the retailer. Okay. So the state of the car is changing every time. So, and blockchain helps in maintaining immutable ledger of all these transactions happening and who is having the car at the moment. So this is the basic use of blockchain here, and exposes the function. And what chain code does, chain code exposes the function for reading the state, for querying that, like where my asset is at this point of time. Okay. Now I will start with my demo basically. So I would like to know, like everybody is following me, would like to code along, or I will be giving this as a presentation and they will be referring to this video afterwards. So are you guys okay? There are some questions. Okay. Okay, without any puzzle or proof of work, how entity will verified in the ledger? Okay, so you are asking is how, without a proof of work, how will you say that this entity is good or not? So see, Hyperledger is a permission blockchain, right? So when you use a permission blockchain, let's say this is a network of the banks. There is RBI, SBI, PNB, everything. So they sit together. Okay, they sit together and they say, let's have a blockchain mechanism between us so that there is no kind of any confusions regarding any transactions. So they predefined that these will be the entities who will be running the nodes. Like they will say SBI will be running 3 nodes, PNB will be running 2 nodes, RBI will be running 10 nodes. So they decide beforehand. So there is no need of proof of work for defining the identity beforehand. Okay, because it's a private network, they don't want to use a public blockchain. They want to use a private blockchain, and they know who will be the participants of the network. So that is why they don't do proof of work for adding an identity to the network. Okay. How data will be recorded? So yes, the data will be recorded to the transactions will be recorded to the ledger. So ledger uses an stateless database. It's called as LevelDB, that comes with Hyperledger inbuilt. So all the transactions are recorded on a stateless database. That's a LevelDB database. What I mean by stateless, like if you say MongoDB is a state-based database because you run the instance of it at the backend and then you query it. Stateless databases are like cache memories. So you don't run the server at the backend for it. So they are recorded in the network. So in the network without the server, this starts with when you set up the server. Okay, you don't need to run the instance of the database. So that's why they are recorded. What is disadvantage of Hyperledger? That completely depends upon the business case. By disadvantage, what I will say, where I will not suggest Hyperledger to anyone, is in case of cryptocurrencies. Yeah, because you don't want any middle guy to control it. You don't want any middleman. So that's the disadvantage of Hyperledger. So in the organizations where you don't want middlemen, you don't use Hyperledger. If there is a middleman, there has to be a controlling authority. Then there has to be Hyperledger. But nobody can cheat, and then nobody can do as per their like if they want to change the chain code as well, then the whole network has to change the chain code, and for that everybody has to be on the same page. So nobody can cheat, basically. What is security measures during transaction between clients and peers? Okay, so there is a SDK layer provided by the Hyperledger framework itself. That SDK layer maintains the security with the help of X509 certificates. So there is a CA server, the certificate authority server, that is running in the Hyperledger framework, and that maintains the security. Okay. Can you tell about a channel in Hyperledger? Okay. So yeah, channel. Let's say, as I am always referring to the bank's example, in an bank's example, like SBI wants to do a transaction separately with the RBI. It doesn't want any other competing banks to know what I did, what is my transaction, or what grant I get from the RBI or something like that. So it will establish a channel with RBI. Only RBI and SBI will be knowing that what is happening on the channel. Okay, and every channel has its own ledger. Like so, the channel between SBI and RBI has a different ledger, and the transaction of that and the transaction between RBI and SBI is recorded on that ledger, not on the global ledger that is by every other bank. So any two bodies can form a ledger. Any 2, 3, 4, 5 bodies can form a channel among itself, and that channel will have a separate ledger. So for that matter, I would say RBI can have different channels with different banks, and with the global agencies with global banks, and without any information of that on that for SBI and RBI, SBI and PNB kind of banks, they won't be knowing anything what RBI is doing with international banks. So there is a different channel for that. Okay, so that is a concept of channel. Every channel has its own ledger. Okay, so in proof of stake, Hyperledger is not required. In proof of stake, Hyperledger is not required. Okay. I don't get the question properly, but let me answer it. What I think you want to ask is, in networks like permissionless blockchain, like where proof of work or proof of stake is there, you don't need Hyperledger. Yeah, it's correct. Hyperledger is not required for proof of stake and proof of work scenarios. For permissionless things, it's a permission blockchain basically. Okay, so somebody said code along session. Okay, which consensus algorithm used here? Okay, so by default, let me take an example. So there is no consensus algorithm as such in Hyperledger Fabric, since the consensus takes place at the place of ordering. Okay, and in Bitcoin, ordering is done through mining. Okay, so by ordering, what I mean is, like, you order the transactions. The basic property of blockchain is that all the transactions should be recorded in the manner that when they are occurring. Okay, so there should be no time delay. So that is taken care at Bitcoin using mining, right? And in Hyperledger network, that is called an ordering, and then ordering of Bitcoin is called mining. It's taken care by in Hyperledger, it is taken care by ordering service, and you can configure your ordering service according to your need, according to the business need. Okay, So there is, and by default, what is the ordering service? What ordering service does is, in Hyperledger network, that all the endorsing peers should simulate the transaction and redirect sets are same. Okay. So that is the basic consensus algorithm that comes by default. What you can also do in Hyperledger endorsement policy, you change the policy that if 3 out of 4 ordering endorsement peers approve the transaction, then also it's fine. If 1 out of 4 approve the transaction, then also it's fine. So you change these things according to your need. Okay. So there is no consensus algorithm name. So it's basically the ordering service and you can change the order. So there is no proof of stake, no proof of work. It's a different consensus algorithm that can be changed as per the business need. Okay. Any more questions? Okay. Okay, so let's start with a hands-on session. Okay. Okay. This is the presentation. Yeah. So okay, I think you must be having some good PC. Doing a code along session will not be feasible because installing Hyperledger Fabric binaries from a net takes around 25 to 30 minutes. Then different installing Go and everything takes 10 to 15 minutes time. I will walk you through everything very briefly, and you can ask the questions and later you can watch the videos. Okay. So and also for everybody's is I have developed some scripts that you can execute directly. I will share my repository link. You can execute those scripts directly and you can see your Fabric running without getting into a lot of complexities. Okay. So before starting with your network, what are the things you need? Okay. So prerequisites is the chain code. Like you can write it in Java, Go and everything. You write the chain code. Okay. You should have the chain code written. Then you should have a crypto configuration and network configuration. So by what I mean by that. So I remember I told you that Fabric's certificate authority server, like Fabric CS server. So that manages the crypto thing of the whole network. Okay. So I can configure that Fabric CS server, I can change. So all those configuration regarding to Fabric CS server is known as crypto configuration servers. And then network configuration, like how many peers and everything, that also needs to be decided. Okay. And how many organizations by default, that has to be decided. Then generating the Genesis block, like the first block of your blockchain. So you write this in your while defining the Docker files, you write that this should go in the first block of my blockchain. Then channel configuration. By channel configuration, I mean that these members are the these organizations are the part of the channel, and XYZ, like who can join the channel, who can leave the channel, and policies like that. Setup Docker network. Yeah, basic. Hyperledger framework uses Docker, and Docker. They use Docker so that for different peers, the peers are hosted in Dockers. Okay, so they run on the basically Docker, and then I will create a channel, and then I will ask the organization to join. Then I will install the chain code on all my peers, and then I will walk through it. Okay, then I will interact with my chain code. So these are the things that you need before starting the network. And for designing the business solution, you have to sit and decide. These are basically the business things, right? What MBA guys do and everybody do is like how many organizations should be there, number of organizations, peer per organization, number of channels, like how many channels should be there, number of chain codes. Chain codes can be multiple chain codes, and then CryptoGen tool or a Fabric CS server, ordering service, Solo, Kafka. You can change the ordering service, it's Solo and Kafka. As I said, by default it's Solo. Okay. And then you decide what is the chain code, like designing the chain code, what should be the database. Like by default it's CouchDB for recording the data. Other than By data, I mean any data other than ledger data. Ledger data is stored in level DB. Okay. So if you want to say, I want to store an image in a Hyperledger network, so you will store it in CouchDB. Its footprint can be mapped on the ledger, like the hash of this image is on the ledger, but the image will itself will not on the ledger. It will be in the CouchDB. Okay. And there are logic bifurcation app layer and everything through the SDK layer. Okay. So I will start like I will, since for the A's, I have generated my this GitHub repository so that you can follow. I will share the link. I will share the link with you all. You can follow along. Okay. So what are we doing? What we will do? We will use VirtualBox and we will run a Ubuntu VirtualBox. In that, we will be running our whole Hyperledger network so that if something goes wrong, we can destroy that VirtualBox. And because we are testing, we are developing things, we are on the initial stages, things might go wrong, and it generally happens. So that's why it's better to do in a virtual environment and destroy if things go wrong. Okay. So, and interacting with a virtual environment like VirtualBox, I will be using Vagrant. Vagrant is just a tool like a Chrome extension, and it's just a tool that helps you interact better with the VirtualBox. Okay, it's nothing but it's just a tool. Okay. And how things happen in VirtualBox? Yeah. So setting up the development environment. So what you do, you will, let me show you on the demo. So is the font size okay? I would like to know if the font size is visible to everyone. Is the font size fine for this? Not visible. Okay, let me increase a bit. Is it visible now? I think. Okay. I think it will be visible. Okay. So what will happen? Yes. So what I will do, I will run the Vagrant. I will run the command Vagrant up. You have to follow the repository to get to the stage. So what you will have to do, you will have to have a latest VirtualBox in your system installed. You have to install Vagrant. The link is in this repository. And you can use any IDE that I am using, VS Code. You can use any of your choice. So after cloning into the repo, after cloning the repo and going into the repo, you will write a Vagrant file. Okay. So this is the Vagrant file. What Vagrant file will do, it will expose the ports like 7050 port. It will expose all these ports for the main machine, host machine, and it will, or you can also set the password for, I have sent it to and Vagrant. Okay. You can also set the memory, like I am using number of CPUs 1 and memory 3072. I am using VM, VirtualBox as a VM. You can also configure hypervisor. It's also a VirtualBox kind of environment. It's a different. So you can, it's just basically a tool to tell VirtualBox what it has to do. The memory it has to assign to my VirtualBox, and the number of CPUs and these kind of things, and the port it has to expose while running my virtual machine. And as I said, I will be running this in Ubuntu 16. So I told my Vagrant that while setting up the VirtualBox, also set up this Ubuntu. Okay, 16. So I will be running Vagrant up. So when I do this, since my Ubuntu is already installed and everything is there, it won't take much time. Otherwise, it might take up to, it is exposing the port. Otherwise, it might take up to somewhere 20-25 minutes. And also that depends on the internet speed. Okay. So the VirtualBox is setting up. Let me show you my VirtualBox. So VirtualBox, yes. So I'm just controlling my VirtualBox through this command line. The Vagrant helps in that. You can also do it manually. The things get easier. Yeah, so this is my VirtualBox. So this is running, right? So I use Vagrant up and this session is running. Okay. So my VirtualBox is up. Now I will SSH into that VirtualBox. I am SSH doing SSH. Yeah, so now I am into the VirtualBox. So what is happening here is, yeah. So what is happening here is there is a Vagrant file. That is, everything is on the host machine. Okay. Only the commands are being executed on the virtual machine. Like code and everything is on the host machine. Like it's on my desktop in the repository. Everything is in this machine, on my host machine, but it's been executed on the virtual machine. So that things, if the things goes wrong, you can destroy it later. Okay. So now where are we? We have set up the VirtualBox and we have SSH into the virtual machine. Okay. Now I will have to install the prerequisites and the binaries for the Hyperledger network. So basically you have to download all the framework from the Hyperledger. Okay, so basically you're downloading a software into your virtual machine. So for that, I have already written the scripts in my network. So here in the setup folder. So let me explain you step by step what will happen. So you will SSH into the VM. You will install the prerequisites. These are the Fabric prerequisites like CS server, CS certificate and everything. It's for the first network. So CS servers and everything Hyperledger provides. And then the Fabric binaries. Fabric binaries are the configurations for channels and everything for the first network. So that you can download from Hyperledger, the Fabric binaries. Then you set up the server, CS server, install the CS server. Then you install the Explorer. So what is Fabric Explorer? Explorer, yeah, let me explain the Explorer. Okay, you install the CS server, everything. And then these are the Vagrant commands. You interact with the virtual machine. So now comes to Explorer. Okay, so Explorer is a GUI based tool for accessing for having a look analytic for doing the analysis on the blockchain. It's basically an analytical tool for all that is happening on my blockchain at the Hyperledger network. Okay, so it tells you number of blocks, it tells you number of transaction and everything. I will demonstrate how it looks. And so you have to install this. It's up to you if you want to install. You have to install your Explorer. Then you install Go. Since we are writing the chain code in Go, I choose Go. And then you install the node utilities. So node utilities are required for the SDK client, right? So for the client, for suppose you are running a Node.js server for your web application, and at the backend it's interacting with a blockchain it's interacting with the Hyperledger. So what you do is you install the Fabric node server, node SDK, in the virtual box itself. Okay, so that is why for interaction this is the node SDK layer of Hyperledger. Okay. So it will take a lot of time, and that is why I'm not going for hands-on. Because everybody's internet is also at different speeds, so it might take a very long time. So you can follow this video and follow the instructions in the repository. I am explaining you the basic outline of how things works. Okay, so what are chain code interfaces? Okay, now let's talk about chain code. So chain code exposes 3 interfaces. Okay, so it has that is a initialization logic, and then there is a invoke for your business logic, and there is a main function. Main function registers the instance with the runtime. what it means. Okay, so what happens is you are a client, you execute the Fabric runtime, you send a request to the Fabric runtime. It may be an initialization request or it may be invoking request. You send it to the Fabric runtime, and the runtime delegates it to the uh, chain code. This is chain code. Okay, this is chain code basically. This is the chain code, and you send the request, and then your Fabric runtime delegates it to the chain code. Whether it's a init request or invoke request, respectively delegates it. So, as I said, there can be multiple chain codes, multiple business logic on the network. So what happens is you have Fabric runtime. Every chain code has to be in knowledge of runtime. Okay. So let's say there are A, B, C, D chain codes, and I will say that invoke initialize this function on chain code. Okay. Yeah. So I will say that initialize this on chain code B. It's not visible. Okay, so I am sending it to chain code B. So the Fabric runtime delegates my request to chain code B. But so what is the need of main function? So main function says that main functions when you execute the chain code for the first time, it tells the Fabric that chain code B is registered with you. You name the chain code, that chain code B is registered with you. Okay. Otherwise, runtime will not know that which chain code exists on my network or not. So that is the use of main function. Okay. So main function on every chain code helps the establish the connection with the runtime. Basically, it establishes the connection with the runtime. Okay. So this way things happens, and then client let's say client sends an invocation request. Okay. So client will invoke send an invocation request to the chain code, and that chain code is running on the peer. So for that, there are peer chain code commands. You can use peer chain code invoke or peer chain code query. I will teach you these commands. Okay. As we move ahead, and there is an initialization function. This function runs at the initial point when the chain code begins. Okay. So let's take an example. I am a car manufacturer. I want to onboard a car on the blockchain. So what I will do? So I am the manufacturer. I will onboard the car. How this car can come to a blockchain network? This is the problem. Okay. So we are solving this problem with the help of init function. So init function says that this car was recorded by this manufacturer at this point of time. So this will be recorded with the help of init function. Okay. Into the chain code. So the init function is required in this case. So onboarding of an asset to the network, we use in initialization functions. And what we will do, we will invoke. Then we will invoke for changing the asset, changing the state of it. Okay. So there are basically three functions: main registers with Fabric, register the chain code with Fabric runtime. Invocation executes the business logic. Init uses the initialization logics. Okay, init is executed only once. Init is run only once. Okay, so this is the thing. Then install. So what is the whole life cycle of the chain code? You install the chain code on the network. You instantiate it using the. So by installing, you mean you registers the chain code onto the peer. By instantiating, when you run instantiate, you runs the main function and the chain code register with the Fabric runtime. Okay. And by invoking, you change the asset, you onboard the asset and everything. And then if you want to change and make some changes in the chain code, then you upgrade, and the upgrade cycle will go from here to instantiate. Okay. It will not go to this install. Since it's already installed, it will go to upgrade, and when it's changed, so it will be instantiated and it registers with the runtime that now chain code B has a version 2, and we have to execute all the invocation required on this chain code B. Okay. So any questions so far? There might be some doubts. Yes. Okay. Okay. Since there are no questions as of now. But by the way, you can keep posting the questions. I will take from time to time. Okay. Okay. So let me go through you with writing the chain code and everything. So we will be using Fabric samples example. It's the chain code samples provided by the Fabric. Here is the link. This is the Hyperledger repository. So this we will be using this marbles chain code. So it's written in Go, and it demonstrates how to do rich queries on the network and everything. So we will be using this Fabric marbles chain code. Here are other chain code samples that you can use. The basic one is AB store, in which transfer $5 from A to B. So this is basically an AB store, and you can change everything. You can try all these samples. Okay, and I will be demonstrating the marbles on Fabric marbles. Okay. Okay. Let me do this thing. Okay. Is it still not visible? This size, I think I won't be able to increase too much from this. Okay, but it's too small, I guess.
So it's visible, so you can
It's
proceed.
a visible. Okay. 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 So what I did, let me start from the beginning. So I will clone the repository and I will cd into that. Okay. So this is my repository. You can clone from GitHub. And what I will do, I will start my virtual box. I will let me shut down it since it's running already. So for shutting down, it's Vagrant hold. Vagrant is just a tool to interact with the VirtualBox through CLI. It's just a tool. So how we will begin? We will write Vagrant up. This Vagrant up will set up my virtual machine, and we'll run my virtual machine. Then we will SSH into it. So I have already incorporated that Fabric marble chain code samples into my repository in the Go CC folder. So here, this is the marbles folder. Okay. So okay, now our Vagrant is our virtual box is up. We will SSH into it. Okay, we are into it. We are into our virtual machine. Okay. So now I am into my virtual machine, Ubuntu virtual machine. What I will have to do, I strongly ask you to please install all the prerequisites from this network and setup folder. You follow this README and execute the script one by one. I have already done that. It takes somewhere around 25 to 35 minutes, so it won't be possible in this lecture. So I have already done that. For me, you have to do this. Run all these scripts with the help of README in this setup folder, network setup. Okay, so that will download all the Fabric and everything. So for me, it's already done. I will start with starting up the network. Okay, so I will start the network. So these are my own scripts written with the help of teammates, the dev init.sh and everything. So these are the scripts, and in this I can walk you through one of the scripts. Dev init.sh. Okay, so dev init.sh. So what it does, what this script does, so it basically sets the directory and everything. After that, what it does, it sets everything like Docker. It says that everything is running at the Docker. It will use the Docker file at this location and set up the Docker network, and it will launch the scripts one by one. It will launch each and every Docker container using these scripts, and then it will set up the this is a clean. Then it will generate the crypto material for the organizations and everything, like number of organizations. So it will generate the crypto material. After that, it will write the Genesis block, first block, from and the configuration of that block can be found through this directory, configuration airline Genesis block. Okay, airline is a channel name that I have decided, and then the channel ID. Then there is a channel ID that I writing the channel. This is the channel ID, and the configuration of the channel, like who will be joining the channel, is written in the configuration channel airline channel.txt file, and the crypto material for that can be found at this location. And after that channel has been set up, then there is an anchoring of the peer on the channel. Okay, so there are two organizations. I am using Acme organization and I am using a budget organization. So these organizations will join the network. Let's Acme can be seen as RBI, budget can be seen as SBI. Much easier to understand. Okay. Then the network will be launched. So I have written all these scripts so that you don't have to worry about it. You join the channel and everything. All these scripts are written. You just have to execute this command. Okay. Otherwise, these scripts can be well understood by reading the Hyperledger documentation. This is so, but it's also if I am teaching each and every script in this lecture, it will take a lot of time. So that's why I have written it into one script, and we will start that network with that script. Okay, and by giving the -e flag, I'm also starting the Hyperledger Explorer. Okay, so let's wait for it. It removes the network if it's running by default. Yeah. So you see it's launching the network. No. It's setting up the peers and everything. Yeah, so the network is there. So our whole Hyperledger network is set up. Okay, with the peers, and the channel name is airline channel, and the peer of the organization budget one has joined the airline channel, and the peer one of the Acme organization has also joined the airline channel. Everything has been taken care by the script, and the network is there. Let me show you what Explorer looks like. So this is the Hyperledger Explorer. So it tells about the transactions. So these are basically configuration transactions type. This is configuration by setting up the network. Chain codes, no chain code has been installed as of now. Blocks, so there are 3 blocks with these transactions. Okay. and network says there are two organization, Acme organization and Billet organization. So it automatically adds MSP, is telling that these are the organization. It's the basic way of writing representing organizations on the network. You just write the name and it will automatically add MSP to it. Okay. Uh, and it also shows the number of transactions per second. It is showing that the peers that we are running, we are running 2 peers. Okay. And everything. Okay. So now the chain code, now the network is there. Now let's assume that now the Windows is running and you have to run different, you want to run a game on it. So it's like now Windows is there, you have to run different things. Okay. So what I will do, now I have set up the network. I will set up a organization context. By what I mean by organization context, I am setting the organization context as Acme, that it is saying that I am the admin of Acme organization and I am running commands on the behalf of Acme organizations. Okay. So I am giving my terminal that Acme organizations. So let me show you what. So what are the by running the script? These are this script is also written in by us. So it automatically does that. And so by context, you can see now the organization context is Acme. Now and everything, the peer chain code, the order address and everything is set up by the script. Okay. Okay. Now the organization context is there. I will cd into my go cc and then I will cd into cc. And then I will cd into my Marble chain code. Okay. Okay, so I am into my Marble chain code. Then I will install my chain code. Okay. So what I am saying, the name of my chain code is GoCC. Version of the chain code is 1. Path to my chain code is marbles. Okay, slash marbles. You can change this path. So my reference directory is src, here src, and in src marbles is my path. Okay. So you just give that command and then these are all the basically utility scripts that are written by us so that things become easy for you. Otherwise, there are big commands written in this chain code install by Hyperledger documentation. So just to make things easier, we have written utility scripts so that it becomes easy for development. Okay. So when I do chain code install, so now it is installing the chain code on the peer of Acme organization. Okay. Since I am in the Acme organization, it will install the chain code on this. Okay. You see, as I told you, the significance of main function. If I go to chain codes, you can see in the Hyperledger Explorer there is no chain code as of now. Okay. The reason is because I have not initiated the chain code as of now, and the Fabric runtime doesn't know whether the chain code exists or not. So I have to register the chain code with my network. Okay, with my Fabric runtime. So what I will do, I will instantiate it. So I will instantiate it. While instantiating, you can give few arguments. Okay, like I am instantiating the chain code with the factory, let's say at Gujarat. Okay, so you can give all those arguments in this function. Those are constructor parameters. Those are called constructor parameters basically. So you give what I'm giving. I'm just giving the commands to the function that I'm giving is args, and then the argument is just initialize it. Okay. So what now I will instantiate it. Now instantiate .sh instantiate. It takes time to register it with runtime. It takes a time. Yeah. So now the chain code is instantiated. Now if you go here and refresh it, no, it's not coming. Yeah, now you can see the name of the chain code is GoCC. So by GoCC is Golang chain code, and you can give name of your choice. You can give your own name as well. And then the path is marbles, and the reference directory is SRC, and the version is 1. So you see the importance of the main function. Now the Fabric runtime knows the chain code is there with the name GoCC. Okay. Yeah. Now the chain code is installed. Now we can play with it. Okay. So let's start with it. What the Marvel examples does in Hyperledger samples. So what I am doing, I am doing an invoke function. I will give that these are the invocation parameters. What I am giving is this is my function name and these are the parameters. As I said, the first parameter, first element of the array is the function name. So init marble, what it is doing, this is a function written in the chain code. So init marble is a function. Yeah, so this is the function init marble. Yes. So what it will do, it will check the arguments. If the length is less, it will throw an error. So, and other than that, it will extract all the information from the function parameters, color, size, and everything, and then it will send this to get state. These are the functions to interact with the Fabric runtime, and then it tells that we are initializing this marble. Okay, marble chain code bytes. Okay, so I don't think I do have a time to explain all these Go codes. By the way, you can learn Go very easily within half an hour YouTube lecture. Okay, and then you just put that marble. After that, you processing and everything. You put that into the marble name and all the arguments, that who is the owner and everything. Okay, so let me walk you through this, how things happens. So now I am saying that invoke this chain code with this is the function name. Invoke this chain code and using this function init marble, and marble name is marble1, color, size of the marble, and owner. Okay, so I am onboarding this marble on my blockchain network. So yes, I have invoked the chain code and this marble is now on the network, and you can see the transaction. I did this from the Acme organization, and this was the endorsing transaction since the chain code is running there. All the transaction will be endorsing transaction because of by default policy of Hyperledger. Okay, so this all the transactions are chain code transactions. Okay, now I will onboard another marble for Tom. Let's say I am onboarding this marble 2 with the color red and size 50, and I'm setting the owner to Tom. Okay, this will also come here, reflect. Yeah. Now the third transaction came in, and I am, let's say I'm also onboarding marble 3 and I am giving it to the Tom. All the 3 marbles I am giving it to Tom. Okay, the marble 3 is also here on the networks. Yes. Okay. And now let's transfer this marble to from Tom to Jerry. I'm changing the state now, so I'm invoking. You see, I'm invoking the functions. So let me change transfer the so what the functions I will be using. I will be using the function transfer marble. For that, the logic is written down, and I will transfer the marble to Jerry. Okay, so I will invoke. Okay, now the marble 2 is transferred to Jerry. Let's check the state of marble. Okay, let's read marble 2. Before that, let me show you the transactions. Okay, so we have in total these 5 transactions of invocation. These were the 3 initialization transactions. So these are total 8 transactions. Okay, on the dashboard. Okay, so 8 transactions, 8 blocks. because we are doing it at a very slow pace, so each block is having only one transactions. If you do it at a clock speed of your CPU, like 1.2 gigahertz, everything, the transaction per block will change. Okay, so it's just a matter of fact, it's not the rule. Okay. So there are 8 transactions. Now, as I will do a query for Marble 2, I will do a query. Query. You see, it shows me the owner is Jerry. Now, okay. The Marble document type Marble, name Marble 2, color red, size Jerry. And if I go to this Explorer, you see there is no transaction recorded because it's a query function. Queries are not recorded on the ledgers. So there is no transaction. Okay. Now let's transfer the Marble 2 to, let's say, Tanmay. Yes, let's see. Let me do that. Transfer it to Tanmay. And then I will invoke it. Now the invocation is there. And now you see the transaction, new transaction. Yeah, there is a new transaction. And if I go and check for the chain code query, you will see the owner is Tanmay now. Okay. If I want to see I want to track the whole state of this whole history for this Marble, like who was the owner at what time, of what point of time, who transferred it to whom. So we will go to get the history for the Marble. Okay. So this is also query function. It will not record it in the ledger. Just the query function name is query. The query function name is get history for Marble. Okay. And the argument I am passing is Marble number and everything, Marble name. So the Marble name is here Marble 2. Okay. And then I will write chain.query. I think I went wrong. Okay, I didn't write Marble 2. And then I will query. Okay. I think now it must be visible. So you see, with the transaction ID this, the Marble 2 color this, the owner was Tom, and the timestamp was this. Okay. Is deleted false. So this is the parameter that is given by shim package of, there is a package for interacting with the Fabric runtime. So it says that yes, this asset is still there on the network. Okay, it is showing is deleted equal to false. Okay, so it will be there and with the other transaction. So now the transaction 2 starts. This is the transaction 2. So it says the value is Marble name, color, size. The owner is Jerry now with the timestamp this. So this was the transaction ID. It was executed at this time, and the owner changed to Jerry from Tom. Okay, and is deleted is false. Yes, the asset was still on the network, on the ledger. Okay, now from Jerry, I did another transaction and I transfer this. This is the transaction ID. I made Tanmay the owner. Okay, so it says the owner is Tanmay now at this time, and the Marble is still on that network. Okay, let's delete the Marble and then again change the life cycle. Okay, now I am removing the Marble from the ledger. So I have written these code are provided by Hyperledger. So sample. So there is a delete function. Okay, I am using this and I will invoke. It will be invoke function. Okay, now this Marble is deleted from the network. Okay, now I will again do a query and you see the change here. The last time it was Tanmay the owner and the timestamp was this. Now there is a new transaction. So the transaction ID was this, value null, timestamp, and is deleted equal to true. Okay, so against this transaction ID, now this Marble is removed from the network, and the last owner was Tanmay. Okay, and now is deleted changed to true. Okay, so these transactions must have been recorded on the network, like deleting and everything. So yes, in total 10 transactions. So this was the whole am I aware will be better. Okay. So some people are using it on mobile. I can't help it because I was assuming that you must be on a laptop. Okay, you can see the recording afterward, I think. Uh, well, where are all hyperledgers can be used, sir? Okay, where all. So Hyperledger can be used. Hyperledger can be used wherever there is a need of a blockchain, but the whether the entities don't trust each other, so they need a blockchain because it's immutable, and at the same time they also need a control over the network. Like if it's a permissionless blockchain, like Ethereum, so RBI is giving, let's say, 100 crores to SBI. That transaction can be seen by anybody. Like PNB can see this. Oh, RBI given SBI 100 crores. Okay, so but they don't want this to happen. They want to keep transactions secure. They don't want any outsider to come and check that. Okay, so let's say government, Indian government is transacting with US government for arms deal, and they are using a permissionless blockchain, let's say Ethereum. So any terrorist or everybody will know, or any other country like Russia or China will easily know, like India bought 10 planes from US. Okay, so they are transacting over blockchain, and they thought to use blockchain for immutability, but what goes wrong with that? Everybody knows it, and so they want to keep the privacy. They want to keep the things private. Okay, so what they will do? They will use they will use a private permission blockchain, so that they maintain the basics of blockchain, that is immutability, that is not hampered in any way, and at the same time they are also maintaining the privacy. That's why a permissionless blockchain comes in. I think I made it clear. Okay, thanks. And is there any protocol used here? By protocol, what do you mean? Can you please elaborate, Anita? Mm, thank you, guys. Hello. Oh, okay. I'm waiting for the I am not able to get this question. By is there any protocol used here? I don't know what protocol you are referring to. Obviously, there are certain data sharing between peer to peer. Okay, 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 okay. So there is there are many things that Hyperledger network does. So so that every peer receives the network, they are in sync. I am not able to collect the name of the mechanism by which they do it. Give me a second, I think. So they do share. So they use some fault tolerance mechanism, like data structure like DHTs and distributed hash tables. So with that, with distributed hash tables, with that algorithm, they share the data with all the peers on the network. This is the distributed hash table is the thing that they use generally. DHT is an algorithm that they use. Okay. I think I made this clear, Anita. By the way, everything is pluggable in Hyperledger. You can change it anytime. You don't. What are the research directions here? Yes, there are research directions like what ordering service. You can research on ordering services. You can research on certificate authorities, and You can research on, as you said, peer-to-peer data sharing. That can also be an option. You can research on maintaining the privacy. You can improve the channels. So there are a lot of research opportunities here. So, and ordering service is the one that is that many people are doing research on. Like there was Solo, Kafka, and everything. So ordering service is the one of the major research areas where people do in Hyperledger network. Yeah, this is it. Okay, I am having a problem connecting Fabric with UI. Okay, so what do I do? You should refer to one of the Fabric SDK's documentation. Fabric SDK, I used Node.js Fabric SDK. So there are, I think, in Python as well. Fabric. So the Fabric SDK, I think you must all give part to your certificates and everything properly. That will do, because if you would have given more exact scenario where you are facing a problem, then I would have answered it better. As far as I can say, you should refer to Fabric SDK. So there are by default Fabric SDKs, Node and everything. So you can refer to that and integrate your front end with it. Yeah. Any more questions? Okay. Anyone else who wants to ask questions? Let's wait for 2 more minutes. If somebody is thinking, or if you want me to repeat some slide or something, I can do that as well. Okay. Your email ID. Okay. My email ID. By the way, we are a part of National Blockchain Project. So you can ask your queries here. Also, then my other teammates also operate this email ID. And they can also help in answering. And my email ID is okay. You can always drop us a mail, or you can also raise an issue on GitHub repository. We'll answer that. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you everyone for listening to me for this long and joining this session. And thanks for your feedbacks and everything. Thank you, guys.
Yes, and Tanmay sir, on behalf
Yeah.
of Computer Science and Engineering in association with Wing, we would like to thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule for this informative session. I hope the session was very much interactive and it helped many of them out here. Looking forward to work with you for few more sessions. If you have the participants, if you have any queries, you can contact him through the mail IDs which he has given. And yes, thank you so much. We'll wait for another 1 or 2 minutes. If they have any questions, we can clear that and we can end the
Yeah.
session. To the
Yeah.
participants, we'll be sharing the attendance and feedback form now. Kindly enter those, and if you have any queries, you can clear it out.
Yeah. I hope people have gained some knowledge here. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, we have shared the link for attendance and feedback here. You can just check it out.
Okay, so do I have to fill this feedback form as well, or it's for the participants? Okay, okay, okay. Thank you. So, should I leave the call?
So we'll just wait for another 1 minute. If they don't have any
Okay,
queries,
okay, okay, okay.
if you have any queries, then kindly drop it in the chat box.
Yeah.
Tanmay sir, yes, you can leave the meeting, and if they have any queries, they'll drop a mail to you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank
Thank
you
you.
everyone for joining.
Thank you.